At 3 a.m. in a small studio, they waited for Jimi Hendrix to say something, but he just picked up his guitar, plucked one string, and silence became something else. The room was cramped. 8 people, maybe 9. A recording studio in Manhattan that smelled like cigarette smoke and old wood. The kind of place where real music happened after midnight, when the engineers stopped watching the clock and the tape kept rolling until someone said stop. It was March 1969. Jimi Hendrix sat on a wooden stool in the corner, his Stratocaster resting across his lap. He wasn't playing. Hadn't been playing for 20 minutes. Just sitting there, eyes half closed, fingers occasionally brushing the strings without making sound. Everyone else in the room was waiting. There was a session guitarist named Marcus Webb, good player, studio regular, the kind of musician who could read anything and play it perfectly on the first take. He'd been hired to add rhythm guitar to one of Jimi's tracks. Simple job. Easy money. Except nothing about tonight had been simple. They'd been working on a song for 3 hours. Marcus had laid down his part flawlessly. Tight rhythm, perfect timing, exactly what the producer asked for. When the playback came through the monitors, everyone nodded. It was good. Professional. Clean. Jimi had listened without moving. When the song ended, he'd stood up slowly, unplugged his guitar, and sat down on that stool in the corner. And he'd been sitting there ever since, silent, while everyone waited for him to say something. The producer, a nervous man named Douglas, kept glancing at the clock. Studio time cost money. They were burning tape. "Jimi," he finally said, "is the take good? Can we move on?" Jimi didn't answer. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He'd heard the stories about Hendrix. The genius, the innovator, the guy who could make a guitar sound like it was crying or screaming or whispering secrets. But he'd also heard Jimi could be difficult. Moody. Unpredictable. "Look," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice casual. "If there's something wrong with my playing, just tell me. I can redo it. Whatever you need." Jimi opened his eyes slowly. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked down at his guitar. "Play it again," Jimi said quietly. The engineer rewound the tape. Marcus's rhythm guitar filled the studio again, precise, professional, technically perfect. When it ended, Jimi stood up. He walked to the center of the room, plugged his Stratocaster into a small amp sitting on the floor, and turned to face Marcus. "That's how you play it," Jimi said, his voice soft, without judgment or anger. "Now I'm going to show you what it means." Hendrix didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. What happened next, everyone in that studio would remember for the rest of their lives. Jimi positioned his fingers on the fretboard. He didn't look at the guitar. He looked at Marcus, maintaining eye contact, and he played one note. One single note. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. It wasn't even technically complex. It was just one sustained note, bent slightly, vibrating with something that had nothing to do with technique and everything to do with feeling. The note hung in the air. Jimi let it sustain, his fingers making micro-adjustments that changed the color of the sound without changing the pitch. The note seemed to breathe. To expand. To fill the small studio with something Marcus couldn't name but could feel in his chest. Then Jimi let it fade. Silence returned. Nobody moved. Marcus felt something crack inside him, not his ego exactly, but his understanding of what music was. He'd spent 15 years learning to play guitar. He could read music. He knew theory. He'd played on dozens of albums. He was good. But in that one note, Jimi Hendrix had shown him the difference between playing music and being music. "You played all the right notes," Jimi said, still looking at Marcus. "But you didn't feel anything. You were reading. Not listening. Not feeling." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, to explain that he'd played exactly what was written. But the words died in his throat because he knew, everyone in that room knew, that Jimi was right. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Marcus Webb was. He'd grown up in Detroit. Started playing guitar at 12. He was naturally talented, picked up chords quickly, could play by ear before he learned to read music. His high school music teacher had told him he had real potential, that he could make a living as a musician if he worked hard enough. So Marcus had worked. He'd practiced scales until his fingers bled. He'd studied jazz theory, learned to sight read, memorized chord progressions. By the time he was 25, he was one of the most reliable session guitarists in New York. If you needed someone who could show up on time, play the part perfectly, and not cause problems, you called Marcus Webb. He was proud of that reputation. He'd built a career on being dependable, professional, good. But somewhere along the way, between the theory books and the session work and the paychecks, Marcus had stopped feeling music. He'd learned to play it, to execute it, to reproduce it. But he'd forgotten, or maybe never learned, how to let it live through him. Tonight, in this cramped studio at 3 a.m., Jimi Hendrix had pulled back a curtain Marcus didn't even know was there. Marcus started, then stopped. I don't know how to do what you just did. Jimi smiled slightly. Not a mocking smile. Something gentler. Nobody does. Not at first. He sat back down on the stool, cradling his guitar like it was part of his body. Music school teaches you language, Jimi said. Scales, chords, progressions, that's vocabulary. That's grammar. That's how you construct sentences. He played another single note, this one different from the first. Lower. Darker. It seemed to carry weight. But music itself, Jimi continued, music is what you say with that language. And most people spend so much time learning the words that they forget they're supposed to be saying something. Marcus felt something burning behind his eyes. Not quite tears. Something closer to shame mixed with recognition. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the meaning of this moment is still unfolding. The producer, Douglas, cleared his throat. Jimi, we're behind schedule. Should we just keep Marcus's take and move on? Jimi didn't look at Douglas. He kept his eyes on Marcus. Do you want to try again? Marcus's first instinct was to say no. To take his paycheck and leave. To maintain his professional dignity. But something about the way Jimi asked, without judgment, without impatience, just genuine curiosity, made Marcus reconsider. I don't know if I can do what you're asking, Marcus admitted. I'm not asking you to play like me, Jimi said. I'm asking you to stop playing like everyone else expects you to play. Just for one take. Stop thinking about getting it right. Play what you feel. But I don't feel anything, Marcus said, and realized as he said it how true and how terrible that admission was. I just hear the notes. I see the chart. I play what's written. Jimi nodded slowly, like this was an answer he'd heard before. Then forget the chart. He stood up and walked to the music stand where Marcus's sheet music sat. Without asking permission, Jimi picked up the papers and set them face down on the floor. No chart, Jimi said. Close your eyes. Listen to the song one more time. Don't think about what notes you're supposed to play. Just listen to what the song is saying. Then play what you hear in your heart, not what you see on paper. The engineer looked at Douglas. Douglas looked at the clock. Everyone knew this was eating into expensive studio time. Everyone knew this wasn't how sessions were supposed to run. But nobody said anything. Because everyone in that room sensed they were witnessing something that transcended the normal rules of recording studios and schedules and professional expectations. Marcus picked up his guitar with trembling hands. I might mess it up. Good, Jimi said. Perfect is boring. Perfect is dead. Mess it up. Make it alive. The tape rolled again. The backing track played through the monitors, drums, bass, Jimi's rhythm work laying down the foundation. Marcus closed his eyes. For the first 20 seconds, his fingers moved automatically, muscle memory from years of session work kicking in. He was playing the same parts he'd played before. Correct. Proficient. Empty. Then something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion from the late hour. Maybe it was the absence of the sheet music he usually relied on. Maybe it was just Jimmy's single note still echoing in his consciousness. But Marcus stopped playing what he knew and started playing what he felt. The notes were messier. His timing wasn't as tight. He hit a few clams, wrong notes that would normally make him stop and start over. But something was different. Something was alive. When the song ended, Marcus opened his eyes. His hands were shaking. He felt raw. Exposed. Like he just said something in front of strangers that he never admitted even to himself. The room was silent. Jimmy was smiling. Not the polite smile of professional courtesy. A real smile. Now you felt something. Marcus's voice came out hoarse. It was sloppy. It was honest, Jimmy corrected. And honest always beats perfect. In that quiet moment, Hendrix did something no one expected. Jimmy walked to his amplifier and turned it off. He unplugged his Stratocaster and carefully set it on its stand in the corner. Then he picked up a pen and a piece of paper from the producer's desk. He wrote something quickly, folded the paper, and handed it to Marcus. Don't open this now, Jimmy said. Open it when you get home. When you're alone. When you're wondering if tonight was real or if you imagined it. Marcus took the folded paper, confused. What is it? Reminder, Jimmy said simply. The session ended shortly after. Douglas had both takes, Marcus's technically perfect first version and his messy, emotional second attempt. Jimmy told him to use the second one. Douglas looked like he wanted to argue, but something about Jimmy's expression made him simply nod. Marcus packed up his guitar, shook hands, accepted his session fee, walked out into the Manhattan dawn with that folded piece of paper in his jacket pocket. He waited until he got back to his apartment in Brooklyn, sat on his couch, unfolded the paper. In Jimmy's handwriting, just 5 words. You remembered how to feel. Below that, a phone number. And one more line. Call me when you want to play, not just perform. What followed stayed with everyone in the room. Long after the last note faded, Marcus never called that number. He kept the paper, but he couldn't bring himself to dial. The truth was, what happened in that studio terrified him. Feeling things, being vulnerable, playing messy honest music instead of perfect professional parts. It meant giving up the safety he built his entire career on. But something changed anyway. Over the next few months, Marcus noticed he couldn't play the same way anymore. During sessions, his fingers would start to drift away from the written parts. He'd catch himself improvising, adding little fills and variations that weren't on the chart. Some producers loved it. Others told him to stick to the arrangement. Marcus kept the piece of paper in his guitar case. On hard days, when the music felt dead again, when he was just executing parts instead of creating something, he'd take it out and read those 5 words. You remembered how to feel. 6 months after that night, Marcus was in another studio. Different producer. Different song. Same old Marcus, playing the parts as written. Except this time, in the middle of the take, he stopped. Just stopped playing. The producer threw the talkback mic. Marcus? You okay? Did you lose your place? Marcus looked at the sheet music in front of him. All those perfectly notated measures. All those correct notes. He reached over and turned the music face down. I'm fine, Marcus said. Can we run it one more time? I want to try something different. He played it the way he felt it. Messy. Alive. Honest. The producer kept that take. Marcus started getting different kinds of calls after that. Not the, we need someone reliable, calls. The, we need someone who can bring something to this, calls. Years later, after Jimmy died, Marcus was interviewed for a documentary. They asked him about working with Hendrix. He only played 1 note for me, Marcus said. Just 1. But that note taught me more than 15 years of music school. The interviewer asked what he learned. Marcus thought for a long moment. That mastery isn't about how many notes you can play. It's about how much truth you can put into one. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The piece of paper stayed in Marcus's guitar case until he died in 2003. His daughter found it while going through his belongings. She had it framed. It hangs now in a small music school in Brooklyn. Above it, a plaque reads, Jimi Hendrix to Marcus Webb, 3 a.m., March 1969. Students walk past it every day. Most don't know the story. But sometimes, late at night, when a young guitarist is practicing scales and feeling empty, a teacher will stop them and point to those 5 words. You remembered how to feel. And the lesson continues.